Hi YouTube, it's your boy Grassy TV. Welcome back to the channel. Here Siege Season 6 is expected to start on March 14th at 7 a.m. CST. And much like we've done in the past, today we'll be making a tier list. And this time I'm going to be doing one for both leveling and starters, as well as an endgame tier list. I will have timestamps to both of these in the description below so that you can go to exactly what you're looking for. This tier list reflects my personal analysis and experience with Hero Siege. It is not an absolute ranking, but rather a subjective assessment based on observations of my gameplay, balance, and overall build effectiveness. I acknowledge that different playstyles and perspectives may lead to varying opinions, and I welcome constructive discussions. With that being said, be sure to like and subscribe to the video to keep up to date with all of my future Hero Siege related content. Let's get into it. Our first tier list is going to be for starters or leveling. This is going to rank characters based on how fast they get through the game, how fast they can get to level 100, and how easy it is for them to hit level 100 and be able to farm early hell difficulties like hell 1, hell 2. So starting with white mage, I did not test white mage. I didn't play white mage at all in the current beta. There were some other people that were on white mage. I kind of let them do their testing and do their own feedback. Butcher we're going to be placing in D tier. He does not level fun, right? His leveling is still not very good. You can go for a relic. You can go run through the tutorial over and over. Doing that will give you a random relic every time you do the tutorial. You can try and get yourself, Mighty Sushi, Orberfrost, the sorts of relics, and that will make his leveling way better so that you can kill bosses. It's just on a league start doing that and YOLOing for a relic that you can use to level with is kind of a feels bad moment. So for that reason, we are putting him in the D tier. For Marauder, C tier I think is a good spot for him. You could argue B tier now that he has some of his bombardment skills change. You can actually aim bombardment. Unfortunately, chain trap just isn't a good skill until you get to level 60 for his augment, and then once you hit that, it is much better. The other problem we have with Marauder is you have to level as fire and then switch into arcane, so it's going to require you to kind of know what you're doing in terms of what you should be getting early on, what you need to be looking for while you're leveling to level 60. So for that reason, I'm going to put him in C tier. I would say bouncing grenade is actually probably better than bombardment. Bouncing grenades actually a pretty good skill. I just suck at aim. Viking will also be in the C tier. Unfortunately, Viking doesn't level the best. The physical side of Viking did receive some buffs going to season 6, but it's just not really enough to make me want to level as a physical Viking. Whirlwind is okay. You could level with Whirlwind if you really just don't want to play on the arcane side of the tree, so that's going to be up to you. The best way to level a Viking currently is to run the arcane side of the tree, charge with the passive, switching into Odin's Fury. Redneck I'm also going to put into C tier. I'm not a huge fan of Redneck. His Chainsaw Slash is okay to level with. You could go Chainsaw Massacre. Personally, the whole fire side of the tree is not for me at all. I did try to play it. It seems clunky, it seems slow. He doesn't really have any good movement skills. There's nothing really too crazy going on with him. He's just your typical hack and slash and go sort of character. So once you hit level 60, you hit the augment, it does get a bit better, but there's nothing about him that just screams, oh my god, this is crazy for leveling. The same goes for Shaman. We are going to put Shaman in the C tier. Twister can be okay. It's just so mana intensive that you're going to need to get a lot of sources of mana on kill and just have good energy, get mana on your charms. You're going to need a pretty good amount of stuff there. Rock Fragments is decent to level with. I just feel like Rock Fragments falls off, especially with the additive skill damage changes. You're no longer able to get just 500, 1,000 flat on the skill. It's going to be flat base damage now, which is essentially like skills, but it ends up being less of a multiplier early, and later it gets better. Earth Totem got buffed. It definitely hits more often now. It's much more consistent in its hits, guys. If any of you have played Earth Totem currently in season 5, they're an actual meme. It is definitely better now. However, playing in just the regular season, it'll be okay. It's just nothing that you're going to scream, oh my god, this is insane. Pirate, we're going to put up into the B tier. The only thing that keeps Pirate out of moving any higher is you get no movement skill with a Pirate. You do have Anchor Swing, fantastic for leveling. You have Parrots, which will give you meat shields. Very consistent, just all-rounder good class in general. Just the only thing that's missing is having some sort of movement skill. The same idea comes with Demon Slayer. You directly don't really have any good movement skill with Demon Slayer, but he has good damage, especially once you hit your augment and you're able to strength stack a bit. The strength stacking did get nerfed quite a bit. However, it's completely fine still completely viable. You're still gonna notice the damage difference putting points in the strength stacking. So totally fine there. I'm gonna put him in B tier just because once again he has nothing to really like give him the speed other than just making quick steps. Shield Lancer did get a decent nerf on his home defenses, so you're not going to be able to really get the bulwark proc that you were able to get in season 5. So the best augment for Shield Lancer will be the summon augment in my opinion, and it's consistent, but every time you proc it, your minions will convocate or they'll respawn on top of your character, which kind of slows down your farming speed because you're pulling your minions off of monsters. Pyromancer also putting in the B tier. The only problem that I have with Pyromancer is he just has so many freaking buttons. There's a lot that you have to kind of do to make Pyromancer have good damage. And early on, I I've played with Gabe now for like 3 seasons in a row, and every time this man plays Pyromancer, and I swear to you, I am carrying him. The Pyromancer, like it's not terrible, but if you're gonna be playing it in a group, unfortunately, monsters just get a lot of life, and the Pyromancer just doesn't have a way to deal with that early on. Just unfortunately, he doesn't have the damage to be playing in a group early on, in my opinion. And then for EXO, we are also going to put EXO in the B tier. You could argue EXO being A tier. The reason for it is Solar Dash, especially if you're playing in a group. EXO being able to dash through the different zones to like speed to the next zones quickly can definitely put him up into the A tier. He did get a pretty good amount of nerfs in season 6, so I'm going to drop him down into the B tier for that reason. Illusionist is going to be our first A tier. Reason for it, you have an auto targeting ability. You can just hold left right click down and your beam will just auto target enemies. You also have a built-in teleport that also gives you some movement speed. That you could even argue that one skill could push Illusionist into the S tier because you could back bar it, you could put it on your second loadout, stack a bunch of points into the teleport to give it the additional movement speed, and then you'll just teleport one time, zoom, teleport one time, zoom, teleport one time, zoom. For Amazon, I'm going to put it in the A tier. Amazon is actually pretty good. You do get a teleport on Storm Dash, or you can use Jungle Leap as a way to jump around between zones. This is okay. The only problem I have with Amazon is you really have to level with Lightning. That's going to be your best option in terms of getting damage on Spearnage, but then you'll want to switch out to physical later on. And it does take a little bit of gear to really start ramping up that physical side of it. So for that reason, we are going to put it in the A tier. Demon Spawn is also going to be in the A tier. Demon Spawn got kind of nerfed going into season 5, and in the season 6, it didn't really get any buffs to it. You did get a buff to Bone Storm, so you have a bit more AoE on Bone Storm now, which is nice. Next, we have Necromancer. I'm going to put Necromancer in the A tier. What's nice about Necromancer is once you hit level 60, you do get a teleport from Poison Nova. You can turn it into a teleport ability, which is really nice to be able to, telestomp your minions on and stuff. The only problem I have with minions right now is they're kind of at this state where early on they feel like a minion build, right? Minion builds are typically just slow but consistent. They have decent damage, but it just takes them time for the minions to go and do their dirty work. Nomad, we're going to be putting in the A tier for leveling. He's okay, right? You get the Cloud of Sand, which turns you into a Cloud of Sand at level 60 that you can use to zoom around the maps, as well as that Cloud of Sand is also a teleport ability that you can use early on. It's really strong, actually. And you're going to level with Sand Gush. Sand Gush overall is a pretty good skill to level with. The physical side of Nomad is a troll, right? You will not level with physical side. I've tried it a couple times. I absolutely hated it. Our first S tier character is going to be the Jotun. Jotun just has insane AoE with Orb of Frost. You get it very, very early. You can start putting points into getting more icicles on it. At level 60, you turn it in from being 1 orb to like 5 orbs. You have a built-in teleport skill you can use at level 24. You get an all resistance passive. You get a physical damage reduction passive. You get a lot on Jotun. Jotun is probably one of the easiest classes for beginners to play in Hero Siege. The next class we're going to put in the S tier is Marksman. Marksman gets Vault at level 1. This is a movement skill that you can use to jump over terrain. You also have the gun drones. You also have frag grenade. All of these skills are actually pretty damn good to level with. Paladin, we're also going to put into the S tier. Paladin doesn't directly get any movement skills other than Ball of Lightning. This gives you like some little jump, and then after the jump, you get some movement speed. That is nice. It does take some time before you get the movement speed buff on it. The thing with Paladin is you just have an absolutely dumb skill. Fist to Heavens, especially because once you hit, level 24, 25, you can dump a bunch of points into it to get additional projectiles. That Fist to Heavens just hits so many freaking enemies, and it can shotgun bosses. It's such a good skill to level with that it's going to be in the S tier just for that one reason. Light Doctor, we're also going to put into the S tier. I debated putting it into A tier. The thing is, you do get Randy at level 60. Randy can give you a bunch of movement speed. You can mount him, which is really nice. You will be life stacking to some extent, which will give you, feel like a thick boy. The only downside to play Doctor, his early game isn't the best, but it's not terrible either. I could almost argue putting him in A tier just for that reason. Right, either one of these. I think that S tier is probably going to be a good spot for him though, just because of how much damage he gets from his level 60 augment. Next we have Samurai. Samurai is an obvious an S tier. It's an insane class. You get Blade Barrier at level 1. It does fantastic damage. And then our last class here is Stormweaver, obvious S tier. You get a teleport. You have a giant screen wide skill, right? Chain lightning, and lightning can chain a lot, like a lot. And then once you hit level 60, you get even more lightnings going out everywhere. It's an insane class. Unfortunately, it doesn't have the best boss damage until you start getting a pretty good amount of gear. So that's its downfall. Is its early single target isn't the best. But in terms of leveling, it's an absolutely cracked character. Next is the endgame tier list, and this is going to rank characters based on their performance in the endgame. Understand, a lot happens in the endgame, right? You have speed clearing, like codex farming, you have boss farming, and with the new Inferno difficulty, having higher HP pool bosses, that's going to play a big part in all of this. You have wormhole pushing, where people try to go for the highest wormholes, as well as gaining their seasonal rewards. You have chaos tower pushing. There's a lot that you can do in the end game, and basing all of these characters off of all of these different variables and giving them a rank, it's very hard to do because some of these classes could be very good at bossing, but are absolutely trash for speed clearing, or vice versa. They could be god tier speed farmers, but have mediocre in game damage. So understand that all classes in the game can do all content in the game, but there will be some that maybe are a bit better at specific things. So I'm going to talk about each one when I give them a rank and kind of talk about the different skills and the different things that I know they can do and potentially what is really good on them. So you might see that, I place one character in S tier because it's a phenomenal speed farmer. I might mention, hey, the bossing on this isn't the best. So with that being said, let's get started. First, we have Butcher. I haven't tested Butcher at all in the end game. I haven't played Butcher since season 2. Same thing for White Mage. I haven't really played White Mage. I did a little bit of White Mage in season 4, but since then, there have been a lot of other people that are White Mage mains and Butcher mains that I've just kind of let them do their thing. So that's where Butcher and White Mage are at. Now, I do know that Butcher's infinite damage bug got nerfed, thank God. So that's been fixed, as well as White Mage has Mana Orb. That seems like it was doing pretty good, had decent single target. So I do know those are options for Butcher and White Mage, but beyond that, I'm not completely sure. For Demon Spawn, I'm going to put it in C tier. It does have decent farming. You just need a pretty decent amount of gear to start getting it to pop off. And its single target's not really there. It did take a pretty big nerf going into season 5, and not much has changed with it going into season 6. Next, we have Nomad. I'm also going to put Nomad in C tier. Sandgush, just unfortunately, if you want to be able to kill bosses with it, it just isn't there for bossing. It has decent clear, and once you have teleport moving around, like it's okay. The problem that I find with Sandgush is that it doesn't have that much AoE. It has decent AoE, but it's not that much. And there's a lot more classes in the game that have way more and can do just as much damage to kill those enemies. So for that reason, I'm putting Nomad in the C tier. Next, we have our Viking. Viking's going to be our first B tier class. It did get a bit of a nerf going into season 6. You don't have as many trails. But overall, it's still a fantastic class. It has good single target. It has good multi-target. You are going to need to farm out some decent weapons to be able to get the damage out of it, but overall it's a very well-rounded class. Jotun we're also going to be putting into the B tier. You can actually get pretty damn good boss damage out of the Jotun if you go swap freeze physical, but it's a completely different archetype than going the Orb of Frost Jotun, which is what most people are going to play for speed clearing with, and it's actually pretty good at speed clearing once you have the mana stacking components to it. It's actually very smooth. It's one of my favorite classes to play. It doesn't have the craziest damage, but it is a very consistent farmer. Again, you will need a pretty good amount of gear to make this class really come online, though. And for that reason, we're going to put it in the B tier. Marauder, we're also going to throw into B tier. Marauder is probably my favorite class to play in hardcore just because you get so much crowd control with it. It also has really good damage. It also has, pretty giant AoE. It's a very fun class. Unfortunately, the actual damage of it isn't that high in terms of single target. And the chains, because they take time to expand, it's not the fastest clearing skill. It's just very consistent. So another just well-rounded class. Exo is going to find its way into the B tier as well. Supernova, they get nerfed, right? That craziness is no longer a thing. And just overall, the class as a whole got a bit of a nerf. So it is now pushing its way down into the B tier. It's still viable to complete content with. It's just not going to do it as efficiently. For Shaman, we're also going to be placing it into the B tier. Now, Shaman had its twisters where you could like stand on the waypoint, spawn a bunch of twisters, get a bunch of projectile speed, and cover the entire map essentially. You cannot do that anymore with just how monsters spawn. You have to run to enemies and spawn them. Now, if you're playing in a group, you could technically have 3 other people that are opening the map up and then use the Shaman as a way to clear the map. That's still a thing that you could do. Projectile speed's been kind of changed a bit, so you're not going to get as much range with the twisters. However, if you're playing this in solo, it is now something where you actually have to run to enemies to spawn enemies out. And because you're like running to the enemies and then you have to put down a tornado, the tornado has a delay and then it goes off. It's a little bit clunky. And in terms of totems, Chaos Totem can be okay whenever you do mana stacking with it. That can actually be a pretty damn good bosser. Other than that, the totems are kind of a meme. Pyromancer also making its way into the B tier. Pyromancer is actually pretty consistent, especially because you get so much penetration and extra damage to burning monsters for practically free on this class, which is really nice. It just does require a bit of maintenance. There's quite a few buttons that you'll want to push to be able to get to maximize the DPS out of the class, as well as you're going to have to get a tiny rod. There's really no way around it, and that's an angelic item. Redneck I'm also going to be putting into the B tier. It's a fun class, that's for sure. You have your giant tree trunk triumph that comes down. It's an absolute insane 3/3 farmer. It's very fun. Innately have any sort of way to teleport around, you're gonna have to farm Inferno to get a Gabriel's. And then it gets better, but you still kind of need a target in order to proc the tree trunk. So overall, it is definitely a good class. It's very fun. Now, Illusionist is kind of a hard one to place because Sand Guardians has crazy boss damage when built out, but Age of Proliferation is kind of poop. So I'm going to be putting in the B tier only because it can't really farm that efficiently compared to some of these other classes. However, if you want to do bossing with it, it is a phenomenal bosser. Next, we have Marksman. I'm going to throw Marksman into the A tier. Multi-shot's pretty damn good. Once you get a decent weapon on, you honestly will fly into Hell 5 pretty easily. It is a Fizz class, so you will have to scale up your crit and crit damage as well as you're going to need an unholy or an angelic bow or weapon in order to really scale up its damage. So for that reason, we're going to be putting it in the A tier. But it is a phenomenal farming class. Paladin also making its way into the A tier. It's another insane farming class. However, its boss damage is very low. You're going to need a lot of gear to really start pushing into your boss damage, and being able to kill some of the Inferno bosses with Vista Heavens is kind of a joke. You're going to have to go with the lightning side of the tree, which means you'll have to do a full gear swap. Otherwise, this is an amazing class and one of the fastest farmers in the game. Necromancer is also making its way up into the A tier. It did get some buffs going into Season 6, but the buffs are indirectly to items, right? So you have like St. Jube's. You do get some additional skeletal warriors, but the warriors weren't really doing a whole lot for us anyway. So because it does have a built-in teleport, that's really nice just to be able to have some additional like slow and reduce damage on targets that the poison devil will hit. And once you do get into a St. Jube's, the class really starts to open up. The thing with Necromancer is it's going to take quite a lot of gear because there's just a lot you can put into it, right? It just goes and goes and goes and goes in terms of being able to throw currency and items into it. But it is definitely much better than it was in season 5. Pirate is also in that same boat when it comes to parrots. So you can use St. Jube's. You can just continue going and going and going with gear for these summon parrots. However, Pirate does have Cannonball. Cannonball did receive a nerf to its shrapnel, but it is completely fine. You have more than enough single target damage and just damage in general. The unfortunate part about Pirate is you don't innately have a movement skill, so you just are a run and gun build. Luckily, you have a good amount of AoE that this doesn't really matter too much, but it really starts to come online once you're able to get some additional movement. And Shield Lancer is another one of those builds that's hard to place because it's an insane bosser with the minions. However, its clear is almost like C tier, B tier. Unfortunately, Bulwark having a proc just really slowed down its clear, and the summons on clear aren't the best. I'm going to put it in A tier, but just understand that it is a crazy bosser once you have some of the summon gear available. That moves us on to our S tier, starting with Plague Doctor. Plague Doctor is insane. You get an absolute stupid amount of damage just by stacking life. You go crit on top of that. It's a crazy fun class. You get a lot of speed, especially once you're able to start killing some of the Inferno bosses. It just really just takes off. Very, very fun class. Very good class. It was the same way in Season 5. It's arguably even better in Season 6. Stormweaver also making its way into the S tier. I know there's some people out there that are yelling at me, but Stormweaver doesn't have any single target. It does. It just takes a lot of gear. The thing is, Stormweaver is probably one of the fastest farmers in the game. Next, we have Demon Slayer, also making its way into the S tier. Just a phenomenal character. The Slice of Shadows is a very, very smooth farming skill. It has really good single target. The strength stacking in the skill just really brings it all together. Very fun, very nice skill and character. Bullet Hell, unfortunately, isn't in the best state. You can play Bullet Hell if you want to. Slice of Shadows is just better. Next, we have Samarito coming into Season 6. It did get a little bit of a nerf on its Empire Slash. It now has a 1.25 second cooldown. However, Quick Slash does not have a cooldown, so you can still spam that as like a Whirling Blades to move around with. And then if you get stuck, you'll use your Empire Slash to get unstuck, essentially. So it's still an insane good farming class. It has really good single target with Blade Barrier. You really just can't go wrong with Samurai. And last in the S tier, we do have our Amazon. It starts off a little bit rocky whenever you initially start scaling its damage. And the physical side of it, you will need a decent amount of gear to really start making the Amazon pop off. But once you get into that, it just scales and scales and scales. Very, very fun, very good class. And with that, that's going to wrap up our Endgame tier list for Season 6. As always, be sure to leave your thoughts in the comments section below and subscribe to the video to keep up to date with all of my future Hero Siege related news and content. You can come check me out live at twitch.tv/Graxy_TV, where we're currently playing the closed beta, still going through and testing some additional things before the season starts. Thank you for watching. I'll see you guys in the next video.